You see, and so you kind of like become fixated on one person. You begin to analyze, talk about them, go to girls, ask guys, and ask questions about them. Go to YouTube and begin asking questions about whether now the person likes them. I mean, when you believe that someone's a soulmate, you're going to overthink them, and so you're gonna begin creating a fictitious self of who they are that doesn't even that may or may not even represent reality. You see, and so you kind of like begin to live a world of almost like an illusion. You kind of like in your own little mind-made prison. So you have to see the reality, which is what's up, ladies? This is Alex from Mindful Attraction 2.0, and today we're going to be talking about how to stop attracting assholes and how you're able to attract the right guy. I got this question from one of my Instagram followers, which isn't much, but you know, I got that question, so I was like, let me just answer it. The reason why I find this fascinating is because I do notice that women keep attracting the same kind of guys, and it's also the same for guys, where guys keep attracting the same kind of girls. You know, for example, for me, I always tend to attract the kind of girls that are very kind of like hipsterish and very into spirituality, and as opposed to some other guys who attract a certain types of other girls. The thing is that people are attracted to people who have similar mentalities in terms of characteristics and traits. People attract, if you have a victim mentality, you're gonna attract guys who have the victim mentality. If you're someone who is a leader, who is assertive and has a high self-esteem, you're gonna attract guys who also have high self-esteem. High self-esteem attracts low self-esteem. High self-esteem attracts high self-esteem. Low self-esteem attracts low self-esteem. So pretty much the key, because someone with high self-esteem, someone with low self-esteem cannot be attracted to each other. It just wouldn't work out. You see, the person's insecurity would annoy the person who's secure, and the person who's insecure, the partner's security would annoy them. See, so it just wouldn't work out. So realize that in reality, you're not attracting the wrong guys. It's simply the guys are just a reflection of who you are. The types of relationships you're having are the reflection of who you are. So here are 4 things that you could do to change that. So the first thing you have to do, and it may sound a little cliche, but hear me out on this. Alright, hear me out, because I have a different perspective on that. Just like most of the content that I put out. Don't settle. That's the first thing. The reason why this is important is because in order not to settle, if you don't want to settle, you cannot be needy. Because if you're needy, then you will inevitably settle. For example, let's say that you're full, all right? Let's say that you're hungry and you're waiting at a restaurant for your food, and you're talking with your friend, you have an interaction with your friend, and suddenly a tasty 16-ounce steak passes by you, and you smell it. It doesn't matter what you and your friend are talking about. Your attention will go from your friend to the tasty, juicy steak. Okay? Now, what happens, let's suppose that you are full and that you just ate. Suddenly the same situation, same stimulus, okay? But what happens now is that you don't pay attention to the steak, you pay attention to your friend. The same thing is that when you're needy, it's called being hungry or being needy for a soulmate. When you're needy, your brain will prioritize what your mind is telling you that it needs. So you're always gonna settle. You see, you're gonna take away the attention from your life to the person. So you're going to put more of your energy to get in their validation. That's why women change their habits, and they try to impress the guy through developing the habits that they have just to impress them. So they lose themselves in the relationship. And men who have low self-esteem thrive on that because it helps confirm the masculinity. And so this example explains to you the relationship between scarcity and abundance, between neediness and being whole as an individual. This is why people confuse love with ego attachment and neediness. You see, so starving for someone's validation projects low self-esteem. That's what happens. And so that's why people who have low self-esteem would immediately pick up on that, and you will pick up on the vibe that you guys resonate. And so that's why you're gonna feel a connection with people who are toxic to you. The problem is that because of the kind of mentality that you have, you both are toxic to each other, but you just don't know it. But you don't realize that both of you guys are unconsciously predicated to attract the same kind of persons who have similar self-esteem. So it's kind of like being on an inevitable pathway to pain and failure in terms of relationships. Because low self-esteem does not help. It doesn't help having low self-esteem because you're going to become possessive. And so neediness clouds our judgments. It becomes the lenses from which we see the world and from which we interact with other people. You see, so it kind of morphs reality around us. So it will be difficult for you not to settle because you're needy. That's what it's going to happen. So realize that it's better not to settle than to settle for something that's not good for you. You see, that's the thing. And so by simply not settling, you're going to eliminate the toxic relationships. By simply not settling. So you may ask yourself, it's difficult for me to settle because I'm not meeting people. Well, simple. Go out there and meet people. Go to clubs. Go to organizations. Go to the gym. You see, the more choices you have, the less needy you are and the more relaxed you are. And the higher likelihood you're going to project a vibe of high self-esteem. But if you settle, your self-esteem will be lowered over time. You see, because you're going to say to yourself, you're going to know in the back of your mind that this is not for you. But you have no other choice because you believe you cannot get any better because of the fear of being alone. You got to address the fear of being alone by enhancing your life and not trying to find someone's validation to superficially enhance your self-esteem. So the second thing you have to have in order to attract positive and good relationships and stop attracting assholes is to develop a relaxed mentality. People who aren't relaxed, people who are always tense, are people who are bitter. I mean, you never see a good relationship with relaxed individuals. You never see a good relationship with people who slow down and listen. You never see a bad relationship like that. All of the bad relationships have an element of intensity, an element of non-relaxation. That is a word. And so by simply developing the mentality of someone who's relaxed, which is to say, who's able to slow down and live life. If you're eating, you're just focusing on eating, feeling every bite. If you're walking down the street, you're just focusing on walking and not thinking. You see, if you're not with your partner, you're not thinking about them, you're focusing on what's going on right now, you're not thinking about whether they're cheating or not. If you're just in control of your biology. You know, you're not allowing your mind to dictate to you what's going to happen, because when you allow your mind to control you, you cannot stop thinking. That's why most people cannot stop thinking. And so the problem is that the more hurt you become, the more superficial you become as an individual, that mental voice speeds up more and controls you more. You hear that critical voice more and more and more in the voices of different people in your life. And so you cannot control it, and it affects how you view the world. And so that's why people walk around all tense, because they keep talking to themselves, telling themselves a story. Alright? So by simply learning to relax, being in a more relaxed state on a consistent basis, you will be able to counteract that negative energy that attracts people who have a similar energy from which those negative relationships arise from. So what do? Just focus on the breath. Notice what's going on around you. The problem is that when you're focusing on your mind, it's kind of like watching television, where you're watching television so consumed with the television that you don't notice what's going on around you. It's kind of like coming home from work and having a long day and playing with your child. And rather than focusing on your child, you're focusing on what happened at work. Yes, you're with your child, but your mind is in the past. Your mind is not with what's going on right now. You're not playing with your kid. You see, you're absent-minded. So that's what we're talking about. That you're not, by not focusing on the mind, you're relegated to focus on what's going on in front of you. And experiencing your senses is what it is to live. Because when you weren't alive, you had no senses. Being alive is experiencing your senses fully. But by focusing on your mind, you're not able to experience your senses fully. And as a result, you can't really live. Living is not about objects or things. Living is about experiencing the senses of what it is to be a human being. Alright? And so that's pretty much cultivate a relaxed mentality. You will attract people who have a relaxed mentality too. Because people who have a relaxed mentality are rational people. You see, you don't hear a criminal who's impulsive who's relaxed. But you do hear people who are bound to be evil, quote unquote, according to our own moral standard, not be relaxed. I don't know, I'm out of breath today somehow. So the third thing is to become the person who you want to attract in your life. It's so easy to want a perfect person, but it's so hard to be that perfect person. It's so easy to want someone who's in shape, but it's so hard to be in shape. It's a lot easy to give advice and to take advice. It's a lot easy to put out the standards, but it's a lot harder to live by those standards. So the same way is that if you want to be with someone who's good for you, be that person who's good for everyone. But the problem is that we see the world through a thick fog of emotions of our ego, so we don't see how we are in reality. We see a distorted view of who we are, that we kind of like enhance who we are, and we overlook our flaws. And so we have to be honest with ourselves and see if we really are the person who we want to attract. So how do you know if you really are the person who you want to attract? Notice how much you love yourself. Notice how much you want to change. Notice how often you compare yourself. If you compare yourself to other people consistently, that's not a sign of loving yourself. That's not a sign of someone who's likable. Because if you don't like yourself, nobody will like you. It all begins with you. Okay? If you're someone who consistently, superficially want to enhance yourself, which is to say, you buy things just to feel better and you just leave it in the closet, by simply going on the outside to find happiness, that could come from relationships, from items, from sales, from watching my YouTube videos. I'm kidding with you. But seriously, by simply looking at the outside, how often you do it could be an indicative and an inaccurate reflection of how much you love yourself. The more you love yourself, the more you will abide within yourself. The more you will begin finding happiness by just being alone and being your own source of self-esteem, being your own source of positive emotions. You see what I'm saying? And so the more you go within yourself, the more happiness you'll find. And as a result, you're going to attract people who think that way. And those are where the good positive relationships arise from. And so the last one is this: the belief that there's a soulmate. Don't buy into that. There's no such thing as a soulmate. There's no such thing as a soulmate. Okay? There's no such thing as the perfect relationships. By simply believing that there's a soulmate, that breeds a mentality of scarcity, and scarcity breeds neediness. You know, people forget that. By thinking someone's a soulmate, you're gonna hang on to them even though the signs tell you otherwise. You see, and so you kind of like become fixated on one person. You begin to analyze, talk about them, go to girls, ask guys, and ask questions about them, go to YouTube and begin asking questions about whether now the person likes them. I mean, when you believe that someone's a soulmate, you're going to overthink them. And so you're gonna begin creating a fictitious self of who they are that may or may not even represent reality. You see? And so you kind of like begin to live a world of almost like an illusion. You kind of like in your own little mind-made prison. So you have to see the reality, which is that there's no such thing as a soulmate, that everyone is flawed. Once you're able to see the flaw in people, that's when you're really seeing who they really are. Like I'm not a perfect person, so I'm hoping that within a couple of videos you're gonna see some flaws in me to take away the mysticism of, oh, he's a nice person. Oh my God, look, he talks so smart. You know, like I'm a normal person. Sometimes I may be an asshole. You know, no one's perfect. Take that out of your mind. Alright, so let's get through the points. The first thing you have to do when we read through the list is don't settle. Have a standard of what kind of guy you want. You know, and if you know that that person is not for you, don't settle just because of neediness. The second one is cultivate a relaxed mentality. People who are tense, people who get together and they are naturally tense people, most of the time it doesn't create happy relationships. People who are relaxed and have relaxed vibes, relaxed mentality, and a relaxed way of being usually have more positive relationships. You know, you don't believe me? Go ahead, test it out. Go watch, okay? And the other one is become the person who you want to be. It begins with yourself and you loving yourself. And the last one is there's no such thing as a soulmate. Fuck that shit. Forget that. That's not real. You know, no such thing as a soulmate. You know, get that out your mind. Voo out. You know. Anyways, this is pretty much it. I hope this made sense. This is Alex from Mindful Attraction 2.0. Comment and subscribe if you guys enjoyed this video. Take care.